This webinar is recorded by IHD, and it was set up as part of our Balanced Literacy project with Southwest Human Development. So my background is a speech-language pathologist, and I'm an AT specialist for Southwest Human Development. And we're going to look at some ways that we can use shared writing in AAC. Welcome, Caroline. I see that you're here, so I'm hoping that I do a good job of presenting everything that we've talked about in our projects over the years, as we've been helping people use AAC and the Balanced Literacy 4 blocks model. So today we're going to look at some of the ways to support the writing block, as well as for students who use augmentative communication. So this is a Wordle, and it's actually made on a Tagxedo website, kind of looking at using AAC and writing, talking about shared methods of writing in order to support earliest communication and written expression. So we're going to provide shared writing experiences in a way that can be structured using some core words that would be important for people to use on their AAC devices. We're trying to figure out ways that we can provide repetition with variation. So that means that one of the strategies that we can use is writing, and using predictable charts involves using repeatable phrases and words, and that'll help us to get the students using some core words a little bit more reliably. So when we're looking at writing, what we need, according to Dr. Gretchen Hanser, is some form of AAC. We're going to talk about what would be good forms of AAC for starting, and then a form of an alternative pencil, a way to write, including access to the alphabet for students who can't use a regular pen and pencil. And the last thing that I think is the most important point on this slide is that our writing activities need to be meaningful. We need to make sure that we have an audience and a purpose. You don't need to be ready to do writing. We just need to figure out why we're doing it at all. So I'm going to take a moment and just make sure that you guys can hear me. How's it going? All right, thank you, Caroline. So limiting AAC devices to just nouns means that our students can only use requesting and labeling. Now, those are early communicative forms, but it doesn't help us to expand out into a variety of communication behaviors. We want to be able to model a variety of messages and ways to express ourselves. So core words have been around for a long time, and the people at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies have worked on a project called the Dynamic Learning Maps to develop a list of core words that are highly useful for communicating in social and academic contexts. So you can go to this website as indicated here on the bottom and see, sorry, my arrow kind of is slow, and see the core list. So that would be something to think about going back after this webinar, taking a look at the core vocabulary list to see some of these items that we're going to be talking about. So where I heard about it was at the ASHA conference in Chicago in 2013, when Penny Hatch was presenting it. It was a project worked on with Allison Dennis and Marlene Cummings. And so they took the first 60 ranked word list and arranged them in groups of 4 so that we could see some word combinations. So I think this is kind of exciting to look at ways that words can be used in combination to help students to use the vocabulary when they have limited ability to access. So maybe if they're scanning. So when we have these in groups of 4, we might see a row that has who, and also some answers to items that would indicate a person, such as he and she. So when we look at this word list, we're going to see some different selections based on the idea of trying to organize it in a way that we can have our most physically challenged AAC users access the core vocabulary in ways that can help them to do some word combinations. So this is the slide from the ASHA presentation. Like I said, it is available at that website, so you can look back on here. And as you look at the different words on the list, you can see how, like on the first page, we have I and like, as well as not, so that combinations could be used to make some simple sentences. So for our beginning communicators, if they're doing some kinds of requests, we could look at structuring writing activities that would include things like what I want, and modeling the language, even if their displays only have 4 items on a page, so that they can see how words are combined. Another good resource for thinking about word combinations and strategies for helping people who use AAC to build their language skills is to look at the AAC Language Lab. This is a resource for parents and teachers and therapies looking at stages of language development. So I think this is really kind of exciting to be able to see some specific recommendations for what kind of words to work with when your students are at earlier developmental stages in their language. So an early beginner at stage 1 will have some single words that they can use to direct activities. So instead of just labeling items or making requests, we also want to figure out ways that we can help with some other communicative functions, such as indicating protesting, like I'm all done or I want to stop. And so thinking about even our early beginners who are using single words need access to items like this. And as we move into stage 2, we're seeing beginner phrases, combining words to make 2 or 3 word phrases for different purposes, to direct others, to express requests, to indicate negatives. And we're looking at increasing their vocabulary. So Prenke Romick Company recommends these 20 starter first words. These are also on the DLM list, the Dynamic Learning Maps list of high-frequency core words that are going to be functional for our students to use in both in their writing and in their expressive language. So we want to think about communicative purposes and ways that we can start combining these words. If your students are challenged to use these words in a full language set, PRC also offers a tool called Vocabulary Builder, which limits the number of words that are showing on the page at a time. Similarly, when we look at the Core First page set for Compass, they have some progression, thinking about your grid size or the number of words that you can handle, and gradually show 3 different progression steps to introduce a full core versus a starter core. When we look at WordPower by Nancy Inman, this is available on lots of platforms. So we'll see it on it's available on Prenke Romick Company's devices, it's available on the Dynavox devices, and it's also available on WordPower or the Chat Wrap by Saltillo. So these words are represented as core words using the WordPower 42 Basic, the WordPower 48, 60, and 80. So there are a lot of different configurations that you could have on a student's personal communication system, where again we could pull out those same 40 words from the Dynamic Learning Maps set and figure out ways to use them functionally. Proloquo to Go also is now using a core word approach with the crescendo vocabulary. This is a 6x10 array. It depends on how many core words will show up on various templates across pages, depending on how many rows and columns you have in your appearance menu. So you want to make sure that if you're using Proloquo to Go, that you put enough rows and columns in your grid so that you can see words within the templates that are the core words across activities. Core words are also available in the pod books. This is the Pragmatically Organized Dynamic Displays by Linda Burkhart and Gail Porter. And we'll see core words associated with sections within the vocabulary. So if you're on the people page, you can see a link to the people pronouns, and we'll also see little words related to going, linking from the page about where we're going to go. We want to make sure that when we're doing writing activities with our students, that we include all the items in Caroline Musselwhite's writing pyramid. We want to help students access specific words, so we can use some word banks for that purpose. We want to use the words from their communication device, that are the core words, and we also want to make sure that we include access to the alphabet. So again, going back to Gretchen's first slide from earlier, we want students to have some form of AAC, some way to write with the alphabet, and meaningful activities. So let's take a look at some ways that we can provide all of this vocabulary. I put it together on a resource for you guys in your handout that's called, let me just see what I called it. Display DLM Core. So this page shows the alphabet, categories, and a set of 40 words plus 5 extra that I thought would be helpful for people's communication displays. So we added the words eat, drink, play, feel, and good, so that if, as a personal communication system, we would have a fairly complete set of functional words. So this is in your handout, and also if you're thinking that you like the Boardmaker display, then what you want to do is go to Boardmaker online and look for core words 40 plus 5 to download the Boardmaker version of this display so that you can make edits to it. I also recently uploaded core words 40 plus 5 no icons so that you can see this display without for kids who are not using AugCom and you want to just be highlighting the words themselves, or when you're doing word study and the icons can be distracting. Another way to get access to categories is to use the Right to Talk book from Caroline Musselwhite and Gretchen Hanser, available on the AAC Intervention website. So these categories can offer some ways to combine the core words plus category words as we're talking about these simple sentence starters and sentence writing in our shared writing block. Having access to the alphabet, we might want to use something like this. This is an alphabet display that Caroline has on her website. It's the tip of the month from April 2011. There's a uppercase and lowercase, so I've included that in your handouts as well. It's called Display Alphabet. And you'll see the front and the back with the alphabet in alphabetical arrangement. The reason that it's like that is, as a beginner alphabet display, we can help kids get a letter awareness. So when it's in alphabet order, they can kind of do the ABC song. We can also arrange it with the vowels on the left, so we have them color coded. We also want to make sure that there's some kind of option to say that's the end of my word, like including a space in whatever form of alternate pencil our student is going to be using. For our kids who can't use that alphabet display, we may need to make the letters larger, we may need to color code them, we may need to offer a more limited set at a time. So these are the alternative pencils by Gretchen Hanser that are available at the Center for Literacy and Disabilities site. Also, don't forget that as we're using the alphabet, we may use some kind of a labeler, we may use some kind of an alternate keyboard, and most of the communication devices that have complete language also have access to a page that has the alphabet on it. So let's get into doing predictable chart writing. If you notice at the bottom of this screen, you'll see a website that has a resource for predictable chart writing that Gretchen Hanser did a number of years ago, and it's very thorough in describing the stages for predictable chart writing as it was adapted at that time for kids who use communication devices and need to use alternative pencils. So it's based on the predictable chart writing by Williams, Carson, and DeLosa. Steps for predictable chart writing. Number 1, on the first day, we write a chart. So here's an example of a sentence starter, something I like. So each student talks about something that they like, and we write it on a chart. Then day 2, we reread the sentences. Day 3, we cut up the sentences and work with the individual words. Day 4, we put the words back together so the students can be the sentence. And day 5, we make a book. So the purpose for writing when we're doing predictable charts is not to make the chart, but to make the book. And as we're going through these steps, we're increasing our students' ability to understand what makes a word, what makes a sentence, how do we write with meaning, how do we sequence when we're making a book, so we're helping improve their concepts about print. So when I do the first day chart, I make sure that I model the language and I model writing. So I'm writing the items up on the chart, and I'm also helping them explore their vocabulary on their device to find the language to make the sentences. So we make sentences together. So as we're going through the device, we'll do think aloud, saying, well, let's see, at this point we could add something I like as something I like to do. So let's go to where the activities are on your communication device, and we can think about what would be activities that I do, for example. And then trying to make sure that we offer an opportunity for the students to explore on their own and do their own writing, pick their own words. So that's where we do I do, we do, and you do, and I try to incorporate that in every writing lesson. Especially if we're dealing with a block where the students at our level where they need shared writing experiences. So what we can do is think about how using core words helps our students increase their language skills and improve their vocabulary, or increase their vocabulary and their language skills. This slide is from Erin Sheldon. She's a mom of a student who uses AAC and presents with Caroline Musselwhite and is part of the Angelman syndrome community. They have a really good, the Angelman Foundation website has really good resources and trainings as well. So when we look at this slide, we think about, okay, if the categories that we want to talk about are some things that are really motivating to our students, this can be a very early type of communication. And instead of just labeling items, we can help students figure out how to talk about them. So we can talk about what I like and then explore the category of things I like, people I like, animals I like, and verbs I like. So as we make the chart, we can stay explicitly within the category of things and make a chart that just says I like things, and each line in the chart has a specific thing in it. That way we're having an opportunity to repeat the chart writing experience with different categories, and then we can also repeat this experience with different peers and different audience. Okay, so like I said, on the first day, we write the chart, And so this is a classroom chart. This is not a predictable chart. So this is a chart that was written in one of the classrooms, and I'm not sure if Mary has joined us or not, but she's a teacher of students. Yeah, Mary is with us, a student of students who are on the autism spectrum in the preschool. So these kids are just learning about concepts about print, and this chart helps them see how the teacher writes words. We'll talk a little bit later about how we can change this into predictable chart writing. I'm going to show you at the same time that week we were doing we were making turkeys out of pine cones. So in a K2 cross-categorical classroom, I was working with some kids who are verbal and some kids who are using devices, and we see that there were 6 kids, 6 kids on this day, and we were making these really odd-looking turkeys. And so the core words that we've used for this one was put on. So we can think about things that different ways that we can write our frames. And so here we're using the steps from an art project, and they had goals for working on prepositions. So the week before we did practice using putting in different ingredients when we were making our shakes. So we had a chance to develop different sentences for a book about what we put in when we were making our shakes. We also did it when we were making our making some Play-Doh. So we were very careful to use the communication displays with the words for I, put, and in or on as our core word starters, so that we could repeatedly model for the students the words that we were practicing. So so when we look at it, when we make it into a book, we're doing predictable chart writing. In some cases, it sounds poetic. So if there's some repetition to it, and then we can what results in a book that is like a poem or just a poem. So in some cases, we change our shared writing experience to more of a poem writing experience, and the way it looks like in the chart is closer to the final product. But again, we need to think about, why were we writing this poem? Who is our audience? What's our purpose for creating it and working with these words? So here's a list poems. So we might think about certain categories that the students need to practice. So in this case, Mark was exploring the vocabulary on his device in the descriptive pages, and finding out about how to say feelings. And we notice that the use of repetition can make it sound more poetic. So his About Me poem has weak, smart, excited, enjoy, funny, curious, smart, stubborn, safe, lucky. So this is kind of cool to see how just having single words that you're exploring on your device can be organized in a way that makes it poetic. Using I Like Poems has been really popular with our students. We do it when we're in lots of different activities. We've had a writer's workshop in computer labs and also out in the community. So one of the important things is to remember that we're practicing using the core words in a slot filler format, but that as we do it, it's really important to model how to write the sentence, or even how to write multiple sentences. So if I can use a student's communication device and do an I Like poem that has a few lines, it helps them to see the pattern of using the core words and then using some of the other categories to finish the sentence. So I can write a poem, then we can do a class poem or a group poem, and then students would have an opportunity to write their own poem. So sometimes we've assigned writing your own poem as something that maybe the next time I see you, you can show it to me, or when we're out in the community, I have asked the participants to send me their poem on an email. I also have somebody that meets with me in the community who has their own blog, so she sometimes writes her poems on her blog. On your communication devices, pretty much every communication system is going to have an About Me page. So that might be a place to look at how to tell something about what I like. I may also include, and probably should include, something about what I don't like, or a link to how about you. So this is a way that we could have the repeated lines I like and things I like in the slot filler format, and then a last line that says something about what I don't like, or asking how about you to end our project. Classroom Suite has a really nice way of practicing writing sentences with a starter and an ending. The hard part is that there's a choice of 2 sentence starters and then as many endings for the sentence as you want. It has picture supports. The difficult part about it is that a teacher needs to help set up each of the starters and the endings and assign it to a student, or work with it, work with a specific activity with a student that's already been kind of preformed with certain choices. And so you want to think about, although it's an errorless writing template, as you design the activity, have kids involved in it. The other thing is that there's not really an ending to this activity. So you might want to do errorless writing using the errorless writing template from Classroom Suite. You might want to think about how you're going to help the students come to an ending, or write their own ending for the for your writing activity. So again, here's thinking about what words would we start with. I like was like maybe things that I like. So we have sports, or toys, or action, or specific people. When we're looking at kids who are early communicators, being able to find the images of their family members or their friends, maybe the first place where they're identifying some of the symbols on their communication displays. And we want to make sure that as they're learning about how to find the people, that they're also getting models of how to make a sentence about that person. So when we're making a comment about who I like, it gives us a chance for them to see that model. So we have the simple sentence frame of I like followed by a noun, but if we add the word to, now all of a sudden we have a way to put in more actions. If we do I like to go, now we can put in places. When we add I like to eat or I like to drink, now we can have the students' preferences for things that they eat or drink from their communication displays, but modeling it in a frame that helps us show how to make some comments or how to share about things that I like. Here's another sentence starter, I can, which also helps us to deal with creating some simple sentences to explore food. We can use different places when we combine it with I can go. The Proloquo to Go app does a nice job of categorizing verbs. So thinking about the different types of verbs is a nice practice with the Proloquo to Go app. And if you don't have that, then just using the verbs and actions as they are color-coded on the communication displays, and talking about how we're doing something in this sentence frame, starting with the I can. So after we make our chart, we would reread the sentence with fluency. So one of the important things to think about on here is day 2, reading our predictable chart. is not about finding the words again on the communication device. We did that when we wrote them, when we were thinking about how we would compose them as we were doing our vocabulary walks. But on day 2, we want to read it back like a poem. We want them to know what the whole sentence or the whole line sounds like as a complete sentence. So in this case, we would have, if we're going to use technology, we would want to maybe have each student read their own line, and if they can't read it, think about offering them something like a step-by-step or a Big Mac that has the whole sentence recorded. I like using the read page on the pod. This is a little screenshot from Compass with Pod where the sentences are shown, and we can turn the symbols on with a feature called Symbolate. So I added to this page no symbols. So I can read the sentence to the sentences that I compose with symbols to sentences that just have words. And the reason that I want to do that is when I'm rereading sentences, it's really important that we're showing students a model of what are the words in the sentence that were created in our predictable chart. We're increasing literacy awareness for our students who need to practice sentence structure and see how the words are put together. So we want to look at in the different devices, how can we focus on the print? In Proloquo to Go, one of the places that we can look at is turn the symbols off in the message window, and then when you go into the recents view, you'll see all the messages that you had made with no symbols in the list because we turned the symbols off in the message window, and then they also get turned off under recents. On the devices from Prenke Romick Company, you can use the notebook feature so that you can read back one sentence at a time, or we can just have the sentences up on the chart and go back to reading it as the teacher points. If we use it on the smart board, we would also like to point out each word. So just thinking about how we can use our technology, whatever items you happen to have in your classroom, to read back the sentence. I've used the Boardmaker Online Simple Word Processor, has a pretty basic read sentence button, so I can paste in the text that we had composed and then look at read one sentence at a time in order to reread the sentences as part of our day 2 activity. On day 3, we can go back to finding the words on the devices as we cut up the sentences. So now we're, again, breaking them apart. The first day we were putting them together, and the third day we're breaking them apart again. So we can look at how these words can be found on the device. And so on the left on this slide, you'll see the Boardmaker Online Simple Word Processor. So if I made some sentences about what I like using symbol displays, then if I, instead of using that, if I go to the Simple Word Processor, and I think here it is bigger, we can have the button that says read sentence so that it's red with highlighting. And so that can be a nice tool. And Boardmaker Online is a subscription. So you can, for free, get print materials, but to have it be interactive, you need to pay for the Boardmaker subscription. The next slide talks about using, again, some commercial products that are not free, but are really good inclusive tools. First Author by Don Johnson allows you to pick a picture and includes core words on a couple of pages, as well as some target words that would fill in based on the items. So when we're practicing making the sentences on day 3, then we can look at what were the words that were used to make the sentence. Clicker Sentences by Crick is available as an iPad app. It's also, you could use the Clicker software on your computer. And the individual words then would be on different pages, and you could practice how to put them together to make the sentences. So we're cutting them apart to see each word individually, and that these words go together to make the sentences. So the important part about day 3 is noticing that sentences are made up of individual words. So what kinds of words? What should we use? What's the highest priority? This is a research study about 2 word sequences that are used by typical kids in early writing by Klendensturm and Kelly, and this is not new research. And so when we look back on this, we can think about which of these words are part of our first 40 list from the dynamic learning maps, and maybe the first 20 or the core word starters from the vendors of the communication devices that we want to think about how to put the words together for our communicators who are moving on to stage 2 or stage 3. And we can think about how these combinations could make a difference. Again, having opportunities to combine words helps students to talk about more communicative functions. So to be able to do things other than just making requests. So we can talk about where I went as one of the common frames used in the journaling of young writers. We would think about how is the communication system set up to share so that they can have similar experiences to other young writers, and programming in the devices some of the places where the kids go and some of the news or the notes about what they did or where they went. So we can use a sentence frame for I went, and again, as a predictable chart, each student would do 1 line in an I went predictable chart frame. Here's a we will that we did with the students and the teacher to talk about what we're going to do. So this was following the rules, going to the library. So each line was developed as a shared writing experience where the students and the teacher were talking through what we needed to include in our rules about going to the library. We will line up, we will find books, we will read, we will shh, we will not shout, and we will not sleep. Looking at going to as another 2-word combination, this is a really nice way to talk about what I will do. So the typical kids using the combination of words going to can be modified. Instead of having going to repeated over and over again, we can use the high frequency words I will. So here's a 3rd grade student practicing verbs on his communication device using the I will frame and then followed by verbs. I am and I am not are so much fun. Figuring out ways that we can act out or pretend to be different things, describe how we're feeling, or describe what we're doing. So we can have, for our kids who need more concrete experiences in order to become more symbolic, we can figure out ways to act out some of these things so that they get a better idea about what it means to represent who you are or what you're doing with a symbol. Day 4 is be the sentence. So we want to figure out how to put the words back into the sentence, act them out. At this point, we can have students shout out some of their favorite words or act out some of the parts. We want to look at getting the sentences back in order in a way that we can see how to make them. So we have a couple of examples of AAC authors here. This is an I Am poem by Gilbert, pretending. I am bunny, I am crocodile, I am fish, I am duck, I am dog, I am not monkey. What about you, kitten? And thinking about here describing we have a poem by one of our students in the language lab talking about I am angry, I am excited, I am hoarse, I am red, circle, circle, circle. Looking at that repetition because she wanted to sound more poetic. I am fun, I am not outside. We were in the language lab, we were in the computer lab. What about you? We used this I am frame when we were at camp. So we brought this poster, we put down the sequences from I am in the Unity devices, and then we had different groups explore the categories in their device, and we could figure out ways for them to each take a turn. I think what I might do differently now is I may be a little bit more explicit in saying I want to do a poem that explores together the category of feelings or the categories of specific items, like I am eating ice cream, so that ice cream wouldn't be as likely to appear in our frame as we're practicing finding how to use descriptive words and feeling words. And same thing with Garth Brooks, like thinking about how we might set up our frame so that the vocabulary that we're practicing together is more explicitly part of their communication system in a way that helps them to access this vocabulary in the future, or if they wanted to write something to a specific person for a specific purpose, they will have had practice finding the specific vocabulary. Looking at this poem again, thinking about the emphasis that repetition provides. So here, Gilbert has 3 lines that he repeats. I am excited, excited, I am excited. And I'm not crazy, I am not crazy. So just looking at how we can build in, so if there were only a few feeling words, we don't have to say, well, then our poem or our story is going to be very short because we only have a few words. We can make more pages with the same words on it. Here's a poem by a young student who watched Gilbert making his and was very interested in how he was writing I am not crazy, and decided that would be a good idea to put in his poem. So he added I am not, and then found a pre-programmed phrase in his device that says you're crazy, and continues to use that phrase to tease his teachers. So Isaiah's poem still had descriptive words, and including the crazy phrase. When we're moving up to more than 2 words, we use a strategy called wordsmithing. This is something that Caroline and I have been incorporating into our Poetry Power presentations and workshops that we're doing with students. And so we establish a rule, kind of like how Cinquains have a rule. Wordsmithing is thinking about what are the words that, what are the rules that are going to be involved in creating your writing. So we do this in poetry writing, having a 3-word frame. So we would have a title, and then this particular frame has a 3-word starter, 3 adjectives, and a 3-word ending. This one's by Caroline. So the title has friends, friends are best, cool, awesome, silly, love my friends. And on the next slide, I took a look at the top 60 words, and using the top 40 plus 5, I actually wrote this whole poem about my dog. The only word that's not in the core words is the title. So I have a 3-word starter using just the words in the on the communication display. So that DLM core display that's part of your handout could be used to write this whole thing. So we have both I and she as pronouns, and the verbs. Looking at some of the books, we can think about ways that the book can be a paper book that we laminate. We can also make the book electronic. So here's an example on this website called Tar Heel Reader, and it's really easy to add books to Tar Heel Reader. And I'm going to show you what the Tar Heel Reader website looks like, I think. By going to Tar Heel Reader. So we type in Tar Heel Reader as the website and we can search for different books. You'll notice across the top we have a URL that specifically labels this book, which is a predictable chart book. And we can turn speech on or off when we're at the point of reading this book. And we notice this truck has a frame. Some trucks are old. So from our high frequency words, our core words, the some and are would be our frame, and then trucks would be a category word that we'd be looking up. Sometimes what we do when we're looking at a category is that we use the name of the category, such as vehicles, and then the initial letter, and brainstorm what would be the word that goes here under the category of vehicles to try to figure out what that word is. And then this page, you see it says petrol trucks. So what I did was from the first page, downloaded it and edited it within PowerPoint so that we had so we could change this page to say gas trucks instead of petrol trucks. You can also, when you have a login to Tar Heel Reader, go in and edit somebody else's book. While I'm showing my screen, I just wanted to show you this is what the VLM website looks like. So we're on the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies. We're looking under Core Vocabulary, and then we can see the dynamic learning maps. This spreadsheet is downloaded into a spreadsheet that shows rank order what are the words that we should use to help our students become functional users, because this is what they're ranked under various categories that Karen Erickson has been working on for quite some time, and finally ended up with a very clear-cut list of items, of rank item words for what shows up in normal conversations and what is highly useful for our students who are using communication devices. So we see the core vocabulary download, the PowerPoints, the first 40 grid, and on this other page I have the Boardmaker online website. So you can see how you can download the Boardmaker first 40 plus 5 with no icons, or you have an example of the display on your handout that shows the icons. So again, looking, your handout shows, this way. So we have the idea of using the icon display, categories, and spelling in combination. So I want to get back to the PowerPoint because I'm realizing that it's gonna be time for me to stop pretty soon, and I want to make sure I get through it. So let's see where we're at. Oh, one of the other things that I didn't go all the way through the story, but remember that when we're writing, we want to make sure that we are writing for purpose. So letting people know that at the end of Tar Heel Reader, you rate what you thought of this book. So how we write the books matters, and we have an audience that's rating our books. Thinking about some other ways to increase the types of words and word starters so that we add some other kinds of vocabulary. I think using two-voice verse is a good idea, like green eggs and ham. So we have a question and a response, a negative comment and a positive comment. So from the language lab, I provided you with the book no, no, don't eat that. And I think I gave you the version that was for young adults, so that it shows on each page an alternating options for what you would eat and what you would not eat. So the core words are eat that and don't eat that. And so that does a nice job of alternating two voices with the idea of the frame for eat that and no, don't eat that. In Caroline Musselwhite's rap story, Pizza Today, she has two voices, the two voice option of thinking about a negative or a positive comment depending on what items we should add to our pizza. So it's what should we buy for the pizza today? How about, let's see, how about marshmallows? No way. How about cheese? That's okay. So we have an opportunity to practice some of the vocabulary by category by saying the different foods, but the questions can be positive. The positive and negative comments can allow us to get a chance to practice some of our core words. We could replace it with things like, I like that and I don't like that, for example. Thinking about repeated response, there are some really nice early books for kids that have things, nice phrases that use core words, like in Are You My Mommy? You know, it's no, not me, or who stole the cookie? Not me. There's a story about the little mole who wants to know who did this on his head. And so there's a response where each animal tells it's not me because I do it this way, and they're actually pooping, and then the little mole wants to know why there's poop on his head. And so for your kids who have potty humor, it's a really fun little book. Using the core words can and thinking about how can we incorporate question forms. We can create books or poems that include the frame for who can and the pronouns I can, she can. Think about our Obama campaign, yes we can. So going back to our little classroom chart that we talked about at the beginning, if I were to make this into a predictable frame instead of and use it as a predictable chart writing activity, I could get lots of ideas from this chart. So the next day we could go back and say, how can we use some of these high frequency core words? We is not in the top 40, but it is in the top 100, and so is the word time. So if we switch this to Thanksgiving is when, and then each page or each line has things we can do, and so we can get, we can give, we can call. So that was how this frame said Thanksgiving is a time to. Instead of just having it that way, if we added we can, now we're practicing over and over again with some high frequency words, some high frequency core words. The eating one, maybe we are again going to include that idea of it is time, like was in the chart here. Thanksgiving is a time to eat. Instead of just having a time to eat at the top of the chart, we write that over and over again and then fill in the blank. Have each student fill in the blank. So I'm hoping that this gives you a chance to think about how shared writing experiences can help us have the kind of repetition with a purpose for students, depending on whether we're writing a poem for somebody, making a book together. It gives us a chance to structure a writing frame and explore vocabulary in specific categories with our students to help them to be better communicators and better writers. So I think at this point is where we need to open up opportunity for questions from the audience. I see we have a number of participants from our Balanced Literacy Club who are here today, so I'd love to hear from you. Oh, Eileen The handout is it's available now for download, and then there's a file button on your screen to be able to download them. I'm thinking that also with the recorded webinar that we will figure out a way for you to get access to the handouts as well. Oh, here's the website from IHD in the chat window. Hopefully you guys can see the chat window. Any other questions or comments? I guess typing can be a little challenging. So I'm just waiting for some of your comments to come up. The next webinar, Caroline wants to remind everybody, is on January 12th on phonemic awareness. So breaking this down even further to the elements of the words rather than using whole words will be part of our will be a piece of our next webinar. So I'm hoping that I did a fair representation for our participants who were part of providing the ideas to this webinar, and that you got some strategies and ways that you can incorporating shared writing experiences with the students that you're working with. So thank you, Tracy, for your comments about chart writing. I know that when we have beginning writers, it doesn't always seem like the best place to start, but doing this, especially as a repeated line, I think is a great way to get our kids involved. And I'm glad that these are things that will work with your students. Right, I'm not so sure how I'm supposed to end this thing now.
Deanna, you can end it at any time.
Okay.
All the links, other than I'm not sure why the OneDrive link are, they're all live, so you can click on them and it'll bring you to that in your browser. And where can I find the links? So I will put it towards the bottom of the chat again. You're gonna have to copy paste this link. It's not showing up live in the chat area. But also you'll see the YouTube link above, and in about a week this presentation will be up there. And I'll have a link in the description of that YouTube video to the files as well. Thank you very much, Deanna. If you want to stick around, you can. If not, people can just put comments in the chat area if they like.
All right, thank you. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions, I can hang out for a while. I just want them to stop doing the recording thing now.